of skills for leading in this environment, some of which are old hat to you, and others of which might, you know, if you came away from this session with one new thing to try, I think that would be a success. So again, we're in an environment where there are way many more questions than answers, so much is unknown, and receiving often conflicting answers to questions depending on whether the answer is coming from the state, the district, the health sector, new information emerging in real time. And amid all this, the urgency for decision making. I think I've just described your life to you. So I'm not quite sure we needed that slide. That's the world you live in. And what we're hearing, and Wallace is working with districts from throughout the country, and this is the common refrain that principals are saying: the skills that got me here are not the skills I need now. And, you know, I think that's something that we really need to pay attention to. Nobody's done, you know, what you're being asked to do right now, nobody's done before. And what skills do you need? So that if your goal is to never let a good crisis go to waste and be strategic and intentional about what you're trying to do, I'd suggest those. You may have other goals, but I would suggest that those are kind of optimistic goals about, you know, you've got to get through this anyway, so you might as well get through it in a way that leaves you off better than where you are now. And one way to do that is to treat school reopening as not just about how to open safely in the fall. Of course, that's the main thing, but you know, thinking more strategically about what the year is going to look like in the end and how you might get there, understanding that you are likely going to start, stop, etc. So we have seven skills, and Doug, I want to invite you in where you've got an example of one or more of these. But skill number one, and frankly, I'd rather go through them quickly and have the opportunity to then return to some of them if we have time. But I have to say, skill number one, clarify the vision, is one. See the last bullet here? Do not skip this step, because it's the step that everybody skips. And it seems very touchy-feely. It seems very, who has time to do this? But in fact, clarifying the vision is what's going to ground everything that you do. And there are some references here. When I reference tools, there are tools that are in the Leading Change Handbook, which is available on the Wallace website for free download, and has examples from principals from Gwinnett County Public Schools, but it also has lots of good tools, like a strategy tool and a collaborative planning tool, because clarifying the vision is not the principal sitting in the office writing a vision statement. It's all about collaborating with all your constituent groups and being inclusive. And then when you've got the vision, you're going to be able to return to it whenever things start unraveling. It's something that will unify everybody. And the communication and transparency, very important. So don't skip the vision. You may be tempted to. And here's one. Skill number two out of the 7 is one that in the Leading Change Handbook is a sentence in just normal change, but in this kind of pandemic induced ambiguity, it is really critical. There are things that are going to remain the same, and people derive a great deal of comfort from knowing that certain things are going to stay the same, things they care about. And so it's being intentional about understanding what, you know, even though everything is changing minute by minute, what is it that's actually going to remain the same? And that will provide people with as much control as you can possibly give them. And usually in the last bullet, the things that are of most importance, or for people to know that our core values are not going to change. We may be in the midst of a crisis, and it may be virtual, and it may be hybrid, and it may be in person, but our core values are still our core values, and talking about what they are, and the vision, as I just talked about. And here's a really interesting one, and I do want to pause on it to ask Doug to give an example. This is something a little new in the thinking about leadership of change. Is, okay, you've never gone, I think it's fair to say you've never gone through an environment like the one you're in now. But you do have, if you think about other times in your career, that you have in fact come on a situation that is at least a little similar, and be able to draw lessons upon some previous successes that you've had, even though they're nowhere near as dramatic and as difficult as this one. But if you think about it, you probably have had a success in your career with reopening in the midst of chaos. And I think Doug has an example for us there.
Thanks, Jody. Yeah, this one is also highly connected to skill 5, which we'll talk about a little. Jody will talk about in a little while. But I think one quick example that I can give you.
We can talk about it now. It's a good.
Okay.
identifying the barriers. Absolutely.
Right. So I think that the reality is the barriers right now are pretty easy to define. Right. They're pretty easy to identify. But thinking about how to look at past experience to inform your current work, or to this last bullet on this particular slide, how to unfreeze those previous negative experiences and drawn upon its positive. An example that I wanted to share that I think hits both this skill 5 and skill 2. My 3rd year as a principal, I had a gunman try to get into our building. So we had taken great pains in effort to put procedures in place. So when thinking about the start of the year, just because we're in a pandemic, as principals, I know you know, because I talk to many of you every day, you still have to have procedures in place. You still have to account for, you know, if you have a hybrid or not. You still have to have fire drills, still have to have weather drills, right? All of those things impact your ability to continue to normalize school, if you will, to some extent. So my example is that, you know, the staff was extremely prepared. We were able to mitigate the situation. People followed the protocol exactly as necessary, and the community was better for it. That negative experience actually turned to a positive experience because, one, it gave us a model for going through a very trying circumstance and understanding that we could do it if we were prepared and if we followed, if you will, our training and what we've learned. And so how to leverage that, both while it was a very trying negative experience, if you will, the positive result was the ability for us to collaborate, to understand the importance of pre-planning. It makes me think about in the SAMS process, just understanding those first responders and their ability to take place and to take action according to what the drill called for at the time. So when it happened in real life, we were better prepared for it. And I'm not suggesting that you have to have these significant traumatic experiences to be organized and prepared, but you can draw upon those type of negative experiences that inform how you will actually move forward and help staff actually move beyond to make positive change. And so a particular readiness tool in leading for change that I think is also important to think about is the organization's readiness for change. And actually walking through that helps you think about both reopening and addressing the challenges and barriers that exist.
Thanks, Doug. We highlight that because that, again, is something we don't usually stress in leading change, which is really crucial in leading change in an ambiguous environment. And of course, I'm tempted to joke and say this skill 3 goes without saying. It's a joke because it's communications. Ha ha. They're muted. I know that they're
you only get my chuckle.
Yeah. But all of these are ways that communications need to happen. And I should give a plug here that NASSP, with a grant from Wallace, is preparing a guidebook for principals on school reopening, and in that it will start to become available in the next, I don't know, week or so. It's going to be in installments, and what they're going to have in that guidebook, they're going to include a set of communications artifacts and tools, such as model letters and bullet points. And so you stay tuned. There will be, and Mark, we will get it to you once it's out, hot off the presses. So that can be another follow-up here, because we have to collectively learn our way through this situation. There are no roadmaps. And here, we say this all the time with leading change, but let me, really reinforce it. Course corrections are a good thing, so you and the people who work with you need to understand that you may have a plan today, and it's not a failure if you've got to change that plan. It's not a failure. You're going to start and stop and do something different. And it really is important to see, to understand the importance of course correcting as you go along, because we don't know how things are going to go. And I think lots of you have used the early win concept. And again, there's a tool for it in the handbook. But the early win is possibly the most valuable of everything, because when you're in a situation like this, you've actually got to prove to people, you've got to give them hope. You've got to give them hope, and you've got to prove that something good, that what you're doing is doable, and that something good is going to come out of it. So a short-term project, something, and in this case, I would actually say something you're going to do in 2 days or 3 days. I mean, that kind of short term that is achievable and important and observable, that once you achieve it, everybody sees the achievement and understands, oh, well, I guess we can do this. It's very motivational. And so, but again, unless you intentionally develop that early win, you probably would not think to do so. And the last one is team building. And this one we've been saying forever at Wallace. Do not try to be a superhero. And I know that, your STAM process is all about this and the development of your team. And you clearly do not have to project that you've got all the answers. What you do need to project, by the way, and this is important, you need to project confidence. So it's not that you have the answers, but it's that you are confident that you are going to be able to figure your way out of it with the team. And I always remember there was, when I worked at the Department of Education in New York City, there was one gentleman who was like the number 2 person in every administration, like the change of, usually when the chancellor changes, the people at the top all change as well. And this gentleman served, I believe it was 8 different chancellors in that same really senior role. He was the only person who survived every single administration to go on to the next. And one time when we were undergoing an organizational transition, which I did not survive, let me say, this man told, I said, Joe, how do you do that? How do you survive every transition? And he said, I always look like I know something. He said, nobody else knows anything, and they don't know what anybody else knows. And so if I look confident, everybody just thinks I know something that they don't. And he gave that as the main reason that he survived all those ambiguous transitions. So, Mark, I do believe we're at time, and I do believe we've covered the content.
Jody, this has just been remarkable, and reading the chat box, it's been fun to see how it's resonated with everyone. I have a question for you. What's it been like for you as leading a national organization, and you are in a new situation? What have been your early wins?
Well, I tell you, our early wins at Wallace have been all about you guys. There was a real feeling back in March, and I don't have to tell you how hard hit New York City was, especially those of you from New York City. But there was a real feeling at Wallace that nothing was possible, that until the pandemic was over, we had to stop our usual practice of what we're doing. And, you know, which is very long and laborious and, you know, includes a lot of voices. And we were just starting a field study with 13 of the districts, and we were in the middle of working with 90 districts on principal pipelines. And there was just this real pessimism that anybody in the midst of a pandemic was going to want to pay any attention. And I really had to fight at the beginning to have us keep doing what we were doing. And it happened because the great people in the 90 districts, or 84 of them actually, and the people in the exploratory tests, all came through. And they, despite the pandemic, all our work has gone forward. And guess what? Our new work is all about equity and equity centered principal pipelines, which could obviously not be more timely. And the districts are thrilled that they continued the work. And that's what it was like for me, was trying to not have our work pause. You know, the last thing, Mark, I'd say about that is there are foundations. There are two ways a foundation can look at this kind of ambiguous situation. And one of them is to use it to proceed, you know, and keep things going. And that's what we did. But there's another way a foundation looks at a situation like this, which is to say, let's save our money until this is over. And then it's clearer, you know, we might just be throwing our money away now. Let's wait till it's over, and we will get, you know, we will get a better insight into how to spend our money. And so the first 3 months of this, for me, were demonstrating that our work could in fact proceed. And by the way, principals, here's the big lesson. The big lesson is people can walk and chew gum at the same time. The big lesson is that in a time of pandemic, principles are even more important than they always are. Even in a time of pandemic, one needs an excellent principal in every school more than ever. So you know, I breathe a sigh of relief to you know, to know that our work, our collective work has gone forward. And so that's the insider baseball that you asked for, Mark, about how I was doing, at least for the first 3 months anyway.
Jody, thanks. And on behalf of everyone who's with us right now and who will watch this recording later, that's terrific, and it's been really helpful. Doug Anthony, you kind of changed your life. You're a consultant now. You're not doing principal preparation and development for just one school district. You're doing a lot of work. Tell us about your early win before we close here and move to breakout rooms.
Sure, Mark. Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be, you know, in a life with some really, really talented people, some friends that I have. It's good to see everyone. And of course, working with Jody is fantastic. So yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest early wins is that I'm working with 7 school districts across the country. And so I have kind of a different collective understanding of the importance of how central offices in particular provide support to principals. And so there's a lot of evidence and a lot of research that suggests that relationship is critical. And so now more than ever, I think the importance of communication, I was looking at all the great comments in the chat about the importance of communication. I guess one of the things that I've learned, Mark, is that collaboration and communication, particularly during this time, could be messy, but being transparent about the fact that it may be messy because things are so fluid and there is so much ambiguity. The reality is that if we're clear about our goals and clear about the fact that it will be messy as we figure things out, people are at ease because principals are working so hard every day. So just much respect to everyone out there working hard, doing the work that you do. It's an honor to be with all of you. So thank you so much.
And I see Jody clapping in the background and see many people all around the country doing the same thing right now. You know, Doug, it's kind of interesting. One of the SAM superintendents we work with said that he told his entire staff, just relax, find joy every day. And at the end of the day, find one thing you're happy about and don't worry about the rest. That's the only way you're going to be able to move forward and be successful. What a great permission that is for people. And it's a way of unleashing creativity that allows us to do things we'd never be able to do otherwise. Hey, everyone, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're going to move now to the breakout rooms. Breakout rooms will last about 20 minutes. And then I'll give you a warning that we're closing. The recording will be sent to you, as well as a lot of links to some of the things that Jody talked about and some other great treats that you're going to like seeing. Hey, thanks everyone for joining us. Going to breakout rooms right now.